Hello and welcome to the Buckeye Cadence podcast. I'm your host today, Grant Kincaid, and no Blake Biscardi today. He was not able to make it to the basketball practice, the summer basketball practice yesterday, which is what this episode is going to be about. Just recapping the happenings, some of the new talent, obviously LJ Smith, and a whole lot more. But let's bring it in and just go in head first here. John Mobley Jr., a big topic of conversation. He was the only player that was interviewed after practice. And, Diebler started his press conference or his media availability talking about Mobley. They want to see a big jump in Mobley's leadership this year. They want to see a considerable jump in his efficiency this year. So I guess if you're looking for life past Bruce Thornton, you're looking at John Mobley Jr. stepping into more of that role. Obviously, he's going to be a different player. He's not, physically imposing, but he is, still very athletic. He can shoot the lights out of the place. And despite some of the past, remarks about Mobley's defense, both him and Diebler were very adamant about the fact that, he has to work on that. And not only that, when he entered the NBA draft process, they obviously came back with some feedback. And part of that feedback was, we want to see you more of a two-way threat. They want to see him be able to play more defense and, like Diebler said, be more efficient on offense. So Mobley, obviously going to be a feature player. He's been in the program for 3 years. He's had a lot of the time, both off the bench and as a starter now. So it should be exciting to see what he can do, especially after entering that draft process and getting that feedback. Now, as far as some of the new faces, Justin Pippen obviously came in from California. He has the last name. He has the dad. Diebler was talking about, that recruiting process, sitting down with Scotty and Justin and kind of getting a feel for what they both wanted out of a program and out of a coach. And it sounds like both Scotty and Justin fell in love, obviously, with the program and with Diebler. And when you see Justin kind of interact with the team, and specifically Mobley, him and Junie get along great. Those are two guys that have seemed to gel really well through obviously some healthy competition so far this summer. Mobley in his media availability had some great things to say about Justin, giving him plenty of praise, for competing in the ACC. Coming with that last name in Pippen and creating kind of his own legacy. And honestly, when you see him play in practice yesterday, when you watch Justin play, you think, wow, no wonder that's Scottie Pippen's son. It can be pretty evident sometimes. The way that he sees the court, the way that he can find guys in spaces, with passes that maybe most guys wouldn't. It's pretty remarkable. And when you see him play alongside Mobley, you kind of see that vision for what Diebler was thinking. That backcourt can be pretty deadly, I think, especially with the way that Mobley can shoot the ball. If he can take that next jump, and you have a guy like Justin coming in who can score himself, but with some pressure taken off of him to be able to give the ball to guys like Mobley and Bynum, maybe your Anthony Thompsons this year, just all this talent that's coming up or coming over from other teams. It should be interesting to see what Pippen can do. So that's of the pieces added to the roster elsewhere, I think Pippen's the guy to look out for first and foremost. Obviously, LJ Smith, the 5-star, reclassified. He's going to be with Ohio State this season. He just got to campus 2 days ago. So he was a very light participant in practice, even though he was there. But he is there, and I think that's very important. And Diebler pointed out in his post-game media availability that he would not have brought LJ onto campus if he didn't think that he was going to be able to make an immediate impact. So, obviously Anthony Thompson, he's been full go. He was in practice, in the full open gym, going 100%. And it was cool to see his athleticism kind of jump off the screen, or not the screen, but jump off while you were watching, because he's as advertised. He is lengthy. He is very athletic. He can rise and get his shot off if he needs. You could see that in 3 different occasions where, he's getting a ball where most guys would have to pump a couple times, then give it off or throw down low. But he just rises up. He kind of has that Kevin Durant shot style, his hands way, way above his head. And he's gonna find ways to get his shots. And I think that's something that, Ohio State hasn't seen since, maybe the kind of the D'Angelo Russell types, the Malachi Branhams, some of these shot creators that have the length and the height to do that, as well as, with that athleticism and that length, he's going to stand out on defense. And I think that's very important for Ohio State, coming off of last year where it seemed like at times it could be a roller coaster on defense, whether or not that was, lack of cohesion because of health and injuries and whatnot. It shouldn't be that much of a problem this year, especially with the experience coming in, from the Curtis Givens, who I'm going to talk about here in a minute, and Yelovich from UK, and obviously Jimmy Williams from Duquesne and Pimpin and so on. So it was really exciting to see those young guys, those 5 stars, kind of get their feet wet and get coached hard. And I think that's where I'm going to segue into next is Jamall Walker, the head coach that came from Calipari, coached with Ohio State a while back in the Thad Matta era, but now he's back. And you can see he's comfortable. He jumped. He stood out right away. When you got the practice, you're thinking, who's yelling? Other than Diebler, obviously, he's a very, very active head coach. I mean, he's down in the middle of the drills, bumping players with the padding down low to simulate a contact during a season, in a game. He's down there in the trenches with the players. So I don't think you could ever knock Diebler for that. But Jamall Walker, the assistant, big energy guy, big mentality guy. You could hear it all practice. He's screaming at everyone to instill toughness. He's like, this is not, at one point he was like, this is just summer practice. He was like, what if this is Michigan State, guys? Like, you're not going to be able to get away with this, and this. I think they're starting very early, instilling a very specific mentality with this basketball team. They are refusing to give away an inch physically. They are going to instill, any kind of toughness they can. They were, harping on physicality. This is not physical enough. You're not giving enough here. You're not using enough of your arm here. Doesn't matter how big you are. You got to be able to stand behind this guy, and you got to be able to hold your own. So they know they have talent. They know they have depth, but they're not going to shy away from keeping that mentality that kept them in the season last year. Even in the Big Ten tournament, Dusty May had very high praise for the team and Diebler for the way that they physically matched up with Michigan, who was a much deeper, much bigger team, obviously, last year than Ohio State. And they gave them a run for their money in that game in the Big Ten tournament. Pretty much solely because of that, even with the health issues and the lack of size and experience and so on and so forth. So I think they're trying to carry that over. And the coaching staff, the guys that Diebler has brought in, have been doing a great job of doing that. Now, another coach, obviously, Will Buford, the Buckeye great, prolific scorer. He was a very active member in practice. He was acting as a player in all the drills. You could see he was wearing a gray shirt, and the gray shirt was completely dark gray by the end of practice because he was playing full go defense, offense, pick and rolls, screens, you name it. He was playing like he was practicing with the team to make the team. So it was, obviously Will Buford, he's still pretty young. He's just fresh off a pro career. And he's challenging these guys like, hey, take me on, see if you can match up with me, a pro caliber player. And I got to think that's going to raise these guys' level of, obviously their preparedness for the season, but just their expectations of what things need to look like. He really got after the guys, amongst participating in the drills. He's coaching mid-play or right after a play ends. He's pulling a guy over. He's like, he's in their face, but he's young enough that he's not in their face to intimidate them. He's really relating to these guys. So just another one of those home run hires for Diebler. It was, two guys that had been in the program already, that were really comfortable, that were really vocal and active. And you could see the players really respected both of them. So I think really good signs from the coaching staff so far as well. Now, a side storyline, Amari Bynum has slimmed down a little bit. What that means, it could just mean that they wanted some better fitness, some better cardio out of him. But they're obviously going to be expecting a lot of very big things from Amari. He really came into his own at the end of last year on both sides of the ball. Obviously, TCU, the second half, he had a couple of defensive miscues, probably stuff that they're going to be talking about and fixing this offseason. But at the end of the day, he slimmed down. He looks a lot more lean. He's going to be even more athletic, which, after some of his dunks last year, that's a pretty scary thought that guy could be more athletic. He could impact the game more so with his pure athleticism. But I think they're just expecting huge minutes out of him. They're expecting a lot out of Bynum, and he's getting in shape to be able to do that. So another one of those guys, obviously like Junie, like Justin Pippen, like I said, kind of the core, these starters probably just to begin the year, that you're going to expect to see hopefully throughout the season flourish and turn into a team that can make a run into the tournament. Aside from the guys I've mentioned so far, a bit of a surprise was Curtis Givens, the transfer from Memphis. During the open gym period where they just split into two teams and they played 5 or 10 or whatever, he was shooting the lights out of the place, and he could. And these weren't little cookie cutter, and his foot's an inch away from the line threes. He's getting 5 to 7 feet behind the line, but he's getting open. Now, more importantly, he on 3 different occasions, I think, he got his shot, he got open, and he drilled shots in transition. They split into a green team and a red team. He was on the red team, and the red team ran away with it because of Givens. I mean, they could not get a hand in his face. They could not contest his shots in time. He was getting off whatever he wanted. And like I said, he was drilling shots from deep and looked really confident doing it. I mean, the guys were hyping him up and everything. So that's, maybe a guy that we didn't expect to make a huge impact right away. Maybe a guy that was expected to be more of a depth piece, especially because he's probably profiles as more of a guard. But that's someone who I guess you could say could step into that Tyson Chapman role in a sense, but maybe even more. If he can elevate his defense and keep that shooting ability, it's going to be hard for Diebler to keep him off the floor, especially with the way that he can score. So, that's someone to watch. It is just June, so who knows what could happen once November rolls around. But that's another guy to keep your eyes on. But I think the general consensus of practice and just from everything, that I and everyone else heard from Junie and Diebler is the depth of this team is light years ahead of last year. And obviously, anything would have been better than last year's depth. There's no mincing words about it. Once Brendan Knoll went down, and Diebler talked about this, once Knoll went down, the ripple effect through that team was borderline devastating. And that was from one injury, from one guy who was profiling to be the sixth man on the team. So, Diebler specifically pointed out the fact that I couldn't have that happen again. I couldn't have one important, role player or one important guy go down, and then the ripple effect be so bad that, it caused losing skids, and it completely dismantled the cohesiveness of the team because they had to go to guys that were not ready to step into the roles that they were in. And obviously you can draw your own conclusions from that. But there was a reason why they got, 3 or 4 guys that averaged well over double digits, that averaged big minutes for the most part, that had experience, multiple years of experience. Diebler knew that he couldn't afford to lack experience and lack the ability for guys to come in and make an impact right away. So the depth is huge. There's no question about it. It's something that they haven't had, and it's something that they absolutely have now. And it looks like 7 or 8 deep comfortably, as it stands. And then you factor in obviously LJ Smith, Anthony Thompson, these super raw, talented 5-stars that could also make an impact at any time. So he can reach into his bag of tricks. Diebler can at any time, and he has a lot at his disposal this year. So obviously, this is a really huge year for Diebler and the basketball program in general. But I think they're really set up well with this roster to do something. So at the end of the day, from this practice in June, I think Ohio State's basketball program is in a really, really good spot, especially compared to last year, where they still ended up making the tournament. Obviously, it didn't end how anybody wanted it to end, even with the incredible comeback to make it a game against TCU. But Diebler was talking about it like, our goal isn't to oh cool, we made the tournament. He said our goals are always going to be beyond that. We want to compete for championships still. There is no make the tournament. They're built for March, but they want to make a run in March. They want to be a team like Michigan was last year, and they want to be able to make a run. He was very clear about that. And even if they weren't able to last year, they without a doubt have a roster constructed to be able to make some noise this year. So all in all, it was great to get to talk to Diebler, get to talk to Junie, get an idea of where this program is. And I think people should have a lot of optimism about Ohio State's basketball program going into this year. I'm Greg Kincaid from the Silver Bulletin. Follow me at gkincaid8 on Twitter, Kincaid8 anywhere else. I will have plenty of basketball coverage as well as football coming up. Obviously, camp is coming in early August. Follow T Silver Bulletin on any social. We will be posting about anything and everything as soon as it happens. We love to hear from you guys. We love to interact with you guys. So don't forget to follow us, like, subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, because, again, we love doing this and we love interacting with the fans. God bless.